Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update.
Fastamai, good evening, it's 5:30 and this is Update for Friday the 20th of October 2023 from Manx Radio. Lewis Foster in for Andy Wint. We've got a 30-minute look at the latest news on the Isle of Man, plus background to the news, Manx sport, business, Sea-Watch and travel updates, and the newsmakers in person. This evening, rethinking how we pay for care, rogue traders targeting the vulnerable, law firm director drunk in charge of children, majority of survey respondents in favour of assisted dying, and FC Isle of Man can't be complacent against Glossop End.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
Now with the time at 29 minutes before 6 with the Update News headlines, Fastamai, Chanel Suku.
Fastamai. Spring Valley Roundabout, also known as Fort North, will close to traffic from 6 a.m. tomorrow until 6 p.m. on Sunday. It's part of the ongoing resurfacing of the new Castletown Road between Spring Valley Junction and the bottom of Richmond Hill. A Manx advocate and director of a law firm has been fined £500 after pleading guilty to being drunk in charge of children. And dates have been announced for the 2024 Pre-TT Classic Road Races on the Ballown course. It will be held between the 24th and 26th of May. In international news, a third person has died as Storm Babbitt continues to batter the UK. A man in Shropshire was caught up in a floodwater, while 2 other people have died in Scotland. The UK Prime Minister says he prioritised the Rafah crossing into Gaza during his tour of the Middle East. Trucks carrying aid are stuck at the gateway from Egypt, but Rishi Sunak says it should open imminently. And minimum service levels are set to be introduced in schools and colleges during strikes. However, they'll only be put into action if unions agree. Those were your headlines. News at 6.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Guramayed, thank you Chanel. That yellow weather warning for heavy rain coming to an end at 6 o'clock. The rain will gradually become lighter throughout the evening and overnight as the strong to gale force northeast winds become fresh to strong. Minimum temperature 8 degrees. Tomorrow will be cloudy with the risk of some outbreaks of light rain, mainly on higher ground and becoming dry later in the day. Moderate to fresh north or northwest wind and a top temperature of 12 degrees. Sunday, though, will be dry with bright or sunny spells and a moderate to fresh west or southwest wind. Highest temperature 13 degrees. Sunset not too far away, I'm afraid, at 6:10 and sunrise tomorrow at 7:57.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Now, how did you manage to pay for care? Did you rely on savings or sell your home to do so? In July, Tynwald approved plans to look into 2 possible models which hope to make paying for care fairer. Health Minister Laurie Hooper explains.
The first one is what we call free personal care. That model is based on the model they use in Scotland, whereby if you need care, your need is assessed and then that care is provided for you and paid for by the state. The individual would have to pick up room and board and lodging costs, which would be means tested, but ultimately the care, which is the most significant portion of the cost, would be covered by the state. The other model is called the mixed model, which is the model they use in Jersey. It's a threshold and cap system with some asset protection built in. So people who are on the lowest incomes would receive the most support, people above that would receive means tested support, and above a certain threshold then you wouldn't be eligible for anything. That's the threshold element. The cap element is there would also be a lifetime cap on how much you'd have to pay for your costs. In Jersey that's set at around 60,000 for an individual or 90,000 for a couple, and what that means is when you reach that amount of money that you've spent, the state will then pick up any further care costs that you may have. People often reach that sort of level between 1 and 3 years depending on the level of care that they need, so it can be that you reach that £60,000 quite quickly. The third portion of that system is asset protection, which essentially says we'd like you to be able to keep some of your own money so you can pass that on to your kids, or you can use it for paying your own costs. And there will be a threshold set that says any assets beneath a certain amount you should be able to keep. In Jersey, they've kind of targeted that at the value of an average house, the idea being to try and help people keep their family home. So they're the two systems in very broad terms. They're very technical, they get very detailed, and that's really why we want to go and talk to people rather than just doing the online consultations that government often does, is because it can get quite technical, and I think it's better to have these conversations with people face to face, because everyone's questions will be slightly different, everyone's circumstances will be slightly different, and I think people will want to know how either of these models could affect them in their situation and their circumstances.
A Manx advocate and director of a law firm has been fined £500 after pleading guilty to being drunk in charge of children. Tessa Hawley reports.
Neil Scott Leonard Morgan of Brunswick Road in Douglas appeared at Douglas Courthouse yesterday, where he admitted 2 offences. Police were called to assist the 50-year-old at 11:20 in the morning on the 1st of October after he was seen lying on the pavement outside the Woodburn pub. He was described as being very intoxicated and was unable to stand unassisted. An ambulance was called after he complained of losing consciousness, but he was deemed medically fit and arrested. At police headquarters, he told officers he'd drank wine the previous evening and had got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do some work before having a vodka and soda at 7 a.m. due to him considering it lunchtime. He told them he'd also fallen earlier that morning and banged his head, but was adamant he was not intoxicated, despite not being able to explain why he smelt so strongly of alcohol. The court was told he'd also maintained that he was concussed and had sustained a serious head injury, despite having no marks, cuts or visible injuries and having been assessed by paramedics. During the hearing, Leonard Morgan's advocate attempted to prevent the media from reporting his client's identity. His application was refused by magistrates after challenge from a member of the press. This incident is totally out of character, the advocate told the court. He's embarrassed, he's ashamed to be in court, he's taken this matter very much to heart. Fining Leonard Morgan and ordering him to pay prosecution costs of £125, magistrates told him, "We do view this seriously."
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates.
A survey of more than 1,200 Manx residents has found that 53% of respondents were strongly in favour of a change in the law to allow mentally competent, terminally ill residents the option of seeking assistance in their death. The survey was carried out by Island Global Research. Simon Richardson spoke to Managing Director Lindsay Jeffries.
We were really keen to understand what people's sort of reaction, that they had the opportunity to select from strongly opposed through to sort of strongly support. And yeah, you're right, 2/3, 66% of respondents supported or strongly supported, either strongly or somewhat, a change in the law to allow mentally competent, terminally ill adult residents the option of seeking assistance in their death. 92% of people said it doesn't matter what the UK does when it comes to changing the law to legalise assisted dying. So people in the Isle of Man want to kind of the situation on their island to be considered for themselves.
Do you see a hardening of views in favour of a change in the law?
I haven't kind of directly compared the findings to the sort of previous one. I am kind of conscious at this time we have some self-selection bias going on in who responded to the survey. So it's not necessarily completely meaningful to make a kind of a direct comparison. But and when I say self-selection bias, what I mean is I'm aware that our survey respondents were not completely representative of the local population. We have a slightly older demographic and a sort of more female responses filling out the survey. I'm also aware we sent the kind of survey out to our research panel who regularly fill out surveys for us, and we really appreciate their responses. We also posted it on social media, and I can see some differences coming through depending on where people had seen the survey and how they responded.
FC Isle of Man return to the Bowl this Saturday when they host Glossop North End in the NWCFL Premier Division. The Ravens beat their opponents 4-0 earlier in the season, but FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones warns his side cannot be complacent this weekend.
No, definitely not. No, it's in the second half of that game, certainly the last 30 minutes or so, we played ever so well and scored 2 goals kind of quite late on. But up to that point, it was a really close game, and we didn't really feel like we played particularly well in large parts of it, and yet we come away with a 4-0 result. And there's others games, like the game we had on Saturday, where we've kind of played really quite well and not got anything out of it. So, no, we'll be taking nothing for granted. You know, this is a Glossop team that have beaten Bury twice in the last couple of weeks. So, you know, they're hit and miss at the minute. You know, some games they'll get a really good result, and other games, like at the most recently at the weekend at home, they've lost to Squires Gate, and things aren't great, you know, and you know, it kind of worries me at the moment, but they've certainly got the quality to turn things around on any given day against any team, and they seem to be a bit like us and play well against good sides, and yeah, hopefully we can be more than a match for them and put in a really good performance. We've just got to keep doing what we're doing. We feel like our performances are building week to week, and you know, as I said to the players, we can be really, really good out of possession, and we're really, really good in possession, but we're not necessarily really, really good in both those things at the same time in the same game for over 90 minutes. And that's where we've really got to kind of build our consistency and deliver on both sides of the ball what we're capable of over 90 odd minutes. And hopefully, as the weeks progress, we keep delivering what we're delivering, then that consistency will come. And we were able to have a little bit of consistency around squad selection, but the last few weeks, because of injuries and illness and availability, there's been a few more changes. The training has been fantastic. The players are working really, really well together, and we just have to know that if we keep up our hard work, then things will click.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Well, it's been a day of disruption on the steam packet sailings today. Anyone who looked out into Douglas Bay this afternoon will know why. Both the Manxman sailings to Heysham and back and the Manannan's journey to Liverpool were cancelled due to the adverse weather conditions. Anyone affected by today's cancellations can contact the steam packet reservations team on 661 661. Tonight, though, the 8:15 Ben McCree sailing to Heysham is scheduled to go ahead as planned, should arrive in the Lancashire port just before midnight.
Like the Steam Packet on Facebook for the latest sailing information.
The company with plans to build the Isle of Man's first offshore wind farm is set to hold 5 community information events next month. Ørsted says it will give residents an opportunity to learn more about the proposals and meet the team behind them. John Galloway is Ørsted's development director for the Isle of Man.
There's a whole range of different topics which people have opinions on, and we've engaged with critical stakeholders now for a number of years. So, for example, with the Steam Packet, we've met with them a number of times, and we're quite confident with this particular offshore wind farm that there's a lot more we can do to mitigate that. The area was identified by the government back in 2015 as being the most appropriate for offshore wind in this location because it is sensitive to some of those critical stakeholders and some of the critical issues like the lifeline routes. But there's a range of different potential topics, and I think the main thing about having these kind of drop-in events and also the ways in which people can contact us, which will be detailed in our information booklet that's coming out to homes next week. The reason to bring those things forward is to make sure that we feel well informed about all of the concerns there are in the community. And then when we come back to consultation next year, we will be hopefully able to address as many of those as we possibly can. I mean, the purpose of the booklet is to introduce the project, the new name and the timeline for consultation. It also gives contact details so people can access our website at orsted.im and find out more information that way. All of the information that will be at the events, we will make sure we're publicising on our own website as well, because we want to make sure that engagement like this from the outset is fully accessible to everyone in the island. But I would encourage people that if they want to make contact with the team and discuss the impacts, but also discuss potentially the opportunities that people see from offshore wind development in the Isle of Man, that they come to those events and get a chance to talk with us.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
The Isle of Man government is being encouraged to look for natural solutions to help Manx residents obtain credit cards. It comes after difficulties were highlighted in people getting or keeping a card from a provider in the UK. Conister Bank Managing Director Douglas Grant says he believes the market here is too small for an island-based institution to launch the facility. Shell is cutting contractor numbers as it looks to boost efficiency and reduce operating costs, it was reported on Friday. According to the Standard, contracts have either been cut short or are not being renewed as the oil major seeks to remove hundreds of contractors from its workforce. And over in the UK, retail sales fell more than expected in September as shoppers held back from buying autumn clothing amid unseasonably warm weather. Consumers also reported struggling with the cost of living pressures. For a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European equity markets closed at their lowest level of the year as investors digested comments from US monetary policymakers and global sentiment stutters. The dollar fell, oil prices extended gains and were on track to rise for a second week on heightened fears that the Israel-Gaza crisis may spread in the Middle East. Gold climbed as fears of a further escalation in the Middle East conflict bolstered safe haven demand. The latest numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close: the FTSE 100 down 1.3% to 7,402, the DAX down 1.6% to 14,798. At 5 to 5, the Dow Jones down 0.51% to 33,242, the S&P 500 down 0.99% to 4,235, the Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index down 1.4% to 13,001. And on the exchange rates, the British pound sterling trading at $1.215 and 1.147 euros. In commodities, gold up 0.81% to 1,993. A barrel of Brent crude oil up 0.3% to $93.29.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Isle of Man Water Sports. Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
The relevant information if you're sailing, kayaking, windsurfing, paddleboarding, sea swimming, diving, surfing, or all of the above this weekend. Sea temperatures will be around 14 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, wind north 5 or 6, backing northwest 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Wave height 0.5 to 1 metre, wave period 4 to 5 seconds, and high tide at around 4:15 in the afternoon. And on Sunday, wind west 4 or 5, backing southwest 3 or 4 later. Wave height 0.5 to 0.8 metres, wave period 4 seconds, and high tide at 5:45.
Manx Glass and Glazing are proud to be an approved contractor with Construction Isle of Man. Call the team on 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate. Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
There's a warning: elderly and vulnerable residents are being targeted by rogue traders. Cold calling is an illegal practice in which workers show up unannounced at your home or try to sell you goods over the phone. John Wannenberg, the chair of the Office of Fair Trading, is urging those who are approached to report it so action can be taken.
We want to make sure that people don't use traders that just appear out of the blue and offer their services. We would recommend always to use recommended traders, which can be found on Construction Isle of Man website, for instance, or the best way is to find people who your family and friends have used in the past and use them. But anyone who knocks on your door, gives you a cold call, I'd treat them very cautiously. Since June 2016, it became illegal. That in itself doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Of course it does. And recently we've had some people cold calling to do with pressure washing. And I would urge anyone who experiences such behaviour to contact OFT, and we will take action against them, rather than put it on Facebook, for instance, which you're welcome to do, but tell us and we can do something about it. Simply knock on the doors or make some telephone calls, and it's the luck of the draw. And particularly vulnerable people who live on their own or are elderly are susceptible to such behaviours. And it's not to say that just because someone knocks on your door that you must use them. Absolutely not. In this sort of cost of living crisis we've got, anyone who goes into debt or anyone who spends money that they don't have, that causes an enormous amount of anxiety, and that's not right. That's not the way the game is played. Very hard for us to police it without any information, so I would urge the public to tell us what is going on, and we'll get some officers out there straight away.
For anyone who does feel that they've been approached by cold callers, whether at home or in their workplace or wherever, what advice would you give to them?
Personally, close the door.
Manx Radio Sport.
Fast am I, Rob Pritchard.
Fast am I. Good evening. Starting with football, and in Manx football this weekend, a huge clash in the north of the island awaits on Saturday as the top two Premier League sides go head-to-head. Ayr United and Ramsey, first and second respectively, and both undefeated so far, will meet at Andreas Playing Fields as part of the latest fixtures taking place tomorrow afternoon. Elsewhere, there's a big face-off in the south of the island in Division 2 as joint league leaders Colby welcome Castletown to Station Fields. All games are scheduled to kick off at 2:30pm, with the exception of St Mary's versus Laxey in the Premier League, which starts at the earlier time of 1:45. Elsewhere, another busy schedule is expected to take place in Manx Rugby on Ireland this weekend. Saturday sees Douglas and Vagabonds men at home in their respective leagues, whilst there's two games in the Ravenscroft Manx Shield. Before that, Vagabonds ladies take to the field at 7:45pm tonight in the Women's NC1 Northwest against Liverpool St Helens. Here's Manx Radio Rugby correspondent Dave Christian.
Vagabonds not been off to the best start this season. Winless so far, played 2, lost 2. However, things are improving for them. They've got some new players up there, growing week by week, and they're going to give Liverpool St Helens a run for their money.
And in hockey, the different contenders at the top of the Manx mixed hockey leagues are starting to show ahead of the latest matches taking place on Saturday. In the Premier League, current title challengers Vikings A will face a tricky test away at Castletown Celts at 2:05pm tomorrow afternoon. Manx Radio's hockey correspondent Ben Cunningham thinks Vikings will have to work hard in this one if they're to claw back ground on Valkyries A at the top of the division.
Castletown Celts last year were a surprise package, and they did beat Vikings A last year. However, Vikings, though, last week, they looked really strong going forward. I think this one will be really close.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, over at the airport, a couple of delays this afternoon on the flights to Edinburgh and Dublin, but flights this evening expected out on time. On the roads, in Douglas, temporary lights on Glencrutchery Road at the roundabout with Victoria Road for resurfacing. The Millennium Bridge will be closed between 8 and midnight for maintenance work until Monday. The new Castletown Road, of course, still closed between Spring Valley Roundabout and the bottom of Richmond Hill for resurfacing. During this time, the junction at the bottom of Richmond Hill will be reopened and traffic will be diverted along the Energy from Waste Plant access road and the top of Quegg Hill. A reminder as well, the Spring Valley Roundabout will be closed to traffic again this weekend from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning until 6pm on Sunday for resurfacing work to continue there. Diversions will be in place. Over at Groudle, temporary lights on King Edward Road, 24 hours a day for patching works. In Laxey, temporary lights on the main road near the Church Hill Junction, 24 hours a day for mains work there. In St John's, temporary lights on the TT course at Belig Bridge, 24 hours a day for drainage work. Over in Peel, temporary lights on Peveril Road, 24 hours a day for resurfacing. In Castletown, Queen Street is closed for resurfacing work, and there are those temporary closures on Back Hope Street. And in Port St Mary, temporary lights at the junction of Queen's Road and Park Road for gas main work.
H&H Motorcycles.im for all your motorcycle requirements. Southgate Industrial Estate, opposite Quayside Tyres. Call 665646. You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Striking the right balance between growing the working population and retaining the skilled workers we already have here on the Isle of Man. That's a challenge outlined by the Enterprise Minister, who's been put before the Economic Policy Review Committee. Tim Johnston was quizzed on the implications of his department's plans to drop work permits.
We do need to be having a very positive need to attract working age people to the island as far as filling the jobs that exist now, and we're seeing right across the economy vacancies. We're also seeing the economy is going to change in the future. We need to understand what that means and how we skill and upskill people in those areas. And I think that's a key issue. So that's also then looking at our young people and saying to them, how do we make sure the Isle of Man's an attractive place for them to stay? And I think it's really encouraging to see the number of young people who are now going through UCM. They're full-time or they're working, and also topping up with education as well, and deciding to have careers on the island, which is really, really positive. But clearly we've also got a lot of young people who go off to university, and there's a job of work for us to make sure how do we attract those people back and have the the exciting jobs they have. And I think, we actually do have a very broad and diverse economy, and I think sometimes we underplay that, and I think that getting that communication out there is really important to make sure we are an attractive place for people. Because the other big issue we all know, again, which drives the need for increasing our working age population, is we have an ageing population, and our income tax is a key plank of our government income. What we can't have in a situation is that starts to shrink, because our working age population starts to shrink. So it's really important that we're doing whatever we can to attract those people, those jobs to the island. And there's a job of work to do there, and that's certainly what the government's setting out, quite ambitious plans in those areas.
An incident in a shop over the sale of alcohol has led to a warning that abusive retailers' staff on the Isle of Man is unacceptable. But Co-op's regional manager Andy Corrie told Manx Radio that customers' behaviour is generally good and considerably better than many areas of the UK.
There are from time to time issues that we experience in our stores where colleagues might be subject to abuse or threatening behaviour from certain customers. Unfortunately, with the volume of transactions that go through our stores, not every customer treat our colleague with the respect and dignity that I feel they deserve. It's safe to say that there's no such thing as being risk-free, but it's safe to say we're not in the highest risk area on the Isle of Man. The quality of living on the Isle of Man is generally good, and the behaviour of the general public is generally good. And crime rates are relatively low on the Isle of Man in comparison to the UK. But I would certainly say that any mistreatment of colleagues or any antisocial behaviour from customers is not acceptable. It shouldn't be part of the job for our colleagues to have to be dealing with that. There's enough things that they need to be doing, and they deserve to be treated with respect and dignity at all times. We find the police to be very responsive and very helpful, and I always find that working in partnership with the police and building those good relationships does bear fruit in terms of the support that's offered from them. Whenever we have need of the police, they're always there to assist, and they tend to deal with the problems in an appropriate manner. There are situations in other jurisdictions where even getting a crime reference number can be difficult, and certainly getting a visit from officers of the law can be incredibly difficult. So I genuinely think we are very lucky on the Isle of Man. The police do a good job, and they do support us.
That's it for Update, compiled from the resources of the Manx Radio newsroom. Thanks to newsreader Chanel Suku, producer Siobhan Fletcher. Whatever you're up to this weekend, have a great time, and stick around after the news as Rob Pritchard brings us the Friday Sport Preview.